Welcome back, folks. Now to Michigan and the Baby Garnet murder case. Now, this was a cold case for more than 20 years.
The remains of an infant were found in 1997 in a campground toilet pit. Detectives were unable to find any leads on the identity of the baby or anyone who witnessed a person abandoning an infant, so investigators called the child Baby Garnet after the campground where the child was found.
Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands has a look at what led to a break in the case.
Get ready with me while I tell you about how an ancestry DNA kit is putting my grandma in prison.
When Jenna Rose Gerwatowski took an ancestry DNA test, she had no idea it would land the grandmother she never knew in jail.
I've never met my grandmother. I didn't even know her name until I was like 14 or 15 years old. And for reasons that are not my business to tell, when my mother's ready to tell that story, then that's on her. But I've never met my grandmother.
Now, Nancy Gerwatowski is facing charges of open murder, involuntary manslaughter, and concealing the death of an individual.
I'm at work, and I get a phone call, and it's a detective from the Michigan State Police. And he was like, I just want to let you know that I reopened a cold case from like 25 years ago. And he was like, and your DNA is a direct match to the victim of this case. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, what case? And he was like, you've heard of the Baby Garnet case, right? And I was like, I was like, you're joking, right? And he was like, no.
The case revolves around Baby Garnet, the newborn girl found dead in a men's pit toilet at Michigan's Garnet Lake Campground in June of 1997. Prosecutors believe she was born at home and died of asphyxiation, but could have been saved with medical intervention. In 2022, investigators working with the FBI and a private genetics lab obtained a DNA profile for Baby Garnet. That, combined with Jenna Rose's DNA test, led to the arrest of 60-year-old Nancy that year. Gerwatowski is facing a possible life sentence if convicted of open murder.
This hour, we are bringing you a motions hearing. Now, this was held earlier this month for the defendant in the case, Nancy Gerwatowski. Let's pick up the hearing now as the judge calls the case.
Here today for several motions, one being a motion to suppress statements made by the defendant. And after meeting with counsel in chambers, the court wants to move forward with that one first.
I want to direct your attention back to the date of 2017. Did you, along with now Under Sheriff Ronald Umbarger, become involved in the investigation of what was called the Baby Garnet case?
Yes, I did.
And what case was that?
That was a case of the remains of an unidentified infant that were recovered from a campground toilet in the Garnet Lake campground area.
What year?
Those were, I believe it was 1997.
Okay.
Through investigative efforts at the time and through time, the remains were never positively identified, nor the parents ever identified.
So considered to be like a cold case at that time in 2017?
It would have been, yes.
And now in 2022, through your investigation and additional evidence and the process of forensic genetic genealogy, where you provided names of the mother and father of people that were highly probably the mother and father biologically of Baby Garnet.
Yes, we did.
And what was the mother's name that you were provided?
The mother's name that I was provided is Nancy Gerwatowski.
And were you able to locate her?
Yes, we were.
And where was she located at the time in 2022?
She was living in a town in the state of Wyoming.
Approximately what time did who went to the home?
All four investigators went to the home. From Michigan, it was myself and Under Sheriff Umbarger, and then the two detectives that I mentioned from the Sublette County Sheriff's Office.
And approximately what time did officers make contact with the defendant in this case?
I reviewed my notes.
And what time was that?
That was at 10:20 a.m.
And how long were you, the undersheriff and the two detectives from Sublette County, speaking or in the home of the defendant? Speaking with her in the home of the defendant.
It was approximately 21 minutes.
During the interview of the defendant at the home, was there ever any mention of an attorney or of the search warrant that you had that you were going to execute at some point in time?
No, there was not.
And after she was advised of her Miranda rights, did she waive her rights and agree to speak with you?
She did not.
So she agreed to come speak with you voluntarily, is that right?
That's correct.
And she was not in custody. Detective Sergeant DeMars, after the defendant said that she would not waive or did not want to waive her Miranda rights, what happened next?
She was advised of the fact that we were in possession of a search warrant to obtain the buccal swabs for a DNA profile. Under Sheriff Umbarger executed that search warrant.
Shortly after 2 p.m. on the same day, did you receive a call or a message from one of those detectives?
I was in the car when Under Sheriff Umbarger received a phone call and had a missed call and returned a call to one of the 2 detectives from the sheriff's office there.
And did yourself or Under Sheriff return that phone call?
Yes,
Do you recall it was you or the Under Sheriff?
it was the Under Sheriff who returned that phone call.
And did you learn why the detective was calling?
Yes.
And why is that?
The detective advised that Ms. Gerwatowski had contacted the Sublette County Sheriff's Office asking to speak to him. That detective advised that he then returned the phone call to Ms. Gerwatowski and stated that she wished to reinitiate contact with law enforcement. She requested to meet with the investigators from Michigan and stated that she would need a ride, someone to come pick her up from a residence and bring her back to the sheriff's office to meet with us.
Still ahead, we're going to bring you more testimony from this hearing. Plus, we get to hear what the defendant told police during her second police interview. Stay tuned.
How are we doing, guys? We're good? Okay.
You're on very shaky ground.
That is unreal.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
I did not do it to hurt anybody.
You know what it is. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
This was a real-life soap opera.
And I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
Back now to Michigan, where we have been showing you key moments from an important motions hearing in the Baby Garnet murder case.
The defendant, Nancy Gerwatowski, is accused in the cold case murder of an infant discovered 27 years ago. Prosecutors say that Gerwatowski delivered the newborn alone, during which the baby died to asphyxiation, but that this death could have been prevented by medical intervention that she did not seek.
Now, her defense argues that Nancy didn't have access to a telephone to call 911. Let's pick up the hearing now with more testimony from Detective Sergeant Gary Demers.
Did you learn why the detective was calling?
Yes.
And why is that?
The detective advised that Ms. Gerwatowski had contacted the Sublette County Sheriff's Office asking to speak to him. That detective advised that he then returned the phone call to Ms. Gerwatowski and stated that she wished to reinitiate contact with law enforcement. She requested to meet with the investigators from Michigan.
What, if any, information or evidence did they provide to you?
They called and told me and then was able to email me a few different items. What those items were, they described to me, is that there was still a recording that their department was in possession of when Ms. Gerwatowski had called their office to request contact with one of their detectives.
We were waiting at the office or somewhere specific in the office?
I don't remember the order of events as far as when she arrived at the office, and I don't know where she was led to. I know that Under Sheriff Umbarger and I were back in the interview room, and she was led back into the interview room by the detectives from Sublette County. That was the first time that I saw her during that reinitiated contact. So the order and place of events, I'm not sure, but I was in the interview room with Under Sheriff Umbarger when she was then let in.
You were asked, basically, if it was recorded, just like I did here today. And is it correct that you answered, I also had a backup audio recorder just in case there was a problem with the initial audio and video as a backup plan?
That's correct.
So you testified before I started asking you this line of questioning that you started the second interview by recapping. And then you retrieved a blank standard Mackinac County Sheriff's Office Miranda warning and waiver form. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We contacted detectives from the Sheriff's Office here and said that you'd like to come back and talk to us again. So I try to call y'all. The first one under your Miranda warning says that you have the right to remain silent. One question. The first question says, do you understand each of these rights that I've explained to you? Yes, I do. And the second question says, are you willing to give up these rights and answer my questions at this time?
Not taking under. Give up these rights?
Maybe you're in the end of it. You don't have to speak to us.
Yes.
By speaking to us, you would be giving up the rights that you're afforded by not having to speak to us.
And then I do have a question as in how come I couldn't have an attorney present?
We don't bring attorneys with us. Right? That's your responsibility. And I think Detective DeMars gave you that explanation.
Yeah,
you get Grant going through the court process. We're not there. You're not under arrest.
No, I understand that.
And so until we get to that point, you know, you can bring your own. You can bring your own today, as far as I don't know, right? It's attorney-client privilege. You may have been almost spoken to 3 attorneys today. I don't know. I don't know. That's in your rights.
Did she make a statement to you and then answer questions and have questions herself?
She did, yes.
And how old was the defendant at that time?
I believe it was 59 years old, I believe.
And during any of the times that you spoke with the defendant in this case, did you or the undersheriff make any threats?
No.
Did you make her any promises of leniency?
No.
Did she appear injured in any way or say she was injured in any way?
No.
Was she intoxicated or under the influence of any drugs or alcohol?
Not that I was ever led to believe.